Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to wherever you're calling in from today. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Brendan O'Leary. I'm coming to you from a seasonably cool Annapolis, Maryland, but it's a nice day out anyway. And I'm joined here by my colleague, Brian. Brian, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. Hi, everybody. I'm in New York City. I am embarrassed to admit I haven't stepped outside yet today, so I have no idea what the weather's like, but I'll report back on that ASAP. I'm excited to be chatting and for everyone uh,
Yeah.
to join us. So
Benefit and drawback of working in a remote company is there are days where I go outside or don't. My
yeah,
kids get home from school and I'm like, oh wait, I haven't been outside today.
exactly.
Anyway, anyway, thanks for joining us today. Really excited to talk to you about why we've seen a lot of developers kind of making the switch from GitHub Copilot to Kilo Code. And we also, if you haven't seen already, have an exciting announcement about Kilo Code, the company today that we'll talk about at the end. And you've probably seen Brian and me on webinars before, but I don't know how many we've been on together. So excited to be here together. And the reason we're together is we want this to be kind of conversational. We've got some slides here. We have some thoughts, but we'd really like you all to help us drive the conversation. And if you've got questions, please don't hold them back. Drop them into the chat or drop them into the questions area if you're joining us on Livestorm. But if you're joining us on YouTube or any other platform, feel free to just drop them in the chat, and we'll try to get a hold of them. And so, why does it matter? Well, we really believe that AI coding is essential, and there's a huge shift in the market right now. There's massive competition among all of the AI foundational models builders, and there's these options that didn't even exist 3, 6, 10 months ago. And so it's really critical, I think. I don't think AI is replacing software engineers anytime soon, but I do think that software engineers that are learning how to use AI efficiently will replace those that are kind of ignoring it. And so I think a key question here, and maybe Brian, the first one for you is, what have you heard people talking about? I've got to go choose an AI coding assistant, and this is what I'm kind of thinking about.
Yeah, so I think there's a few things, and like this slide shows, we have a statistic saying 73% of developers are already using AI tools daily, and I suspect that number will increase. And some of the webinars that I've been hosting over the past few weeks have been about these great new model launches. And I think one thing is that people want to try these new models. They want the flexibility. When a new model comes out that specializes in orchestration or debugging or these long-term tasks, they want to be able to participate, and they want to use the best tool. And when it comes to the actual AI coding assistant, like at Kilo, we're very strong on this open model selection and open pricing angle, where you're allowed to use any model and you only get charged per token. And that's one thing that I've heard from a lot of our users, some really positive feedback. The ability to basically have complete flexibility and to be able to use the best tool for each task, instead of being locked into one tool or one model for everything that you do. Because developer engineering is a dynamic skill, right? Like, you have different use cases for what you're working on. Every developer works on different things and has a different style. And I think the most cohesive model for AI coding is for your tool to adapt to that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's relevant, to the conversation we're having today about, Copilot versus Kilo Code, because this is some things we've heard folks talking about, right? This risk in decreasing your optionality and your ability to try new things, and locking yourself into a single vendor's ecosystem where they control what you have access to. That has a lot of risk, and I think that risk is only amplified in a world where we see AI moving as fast as it does. I talk about that graph that has been on Twitter a bunch, and I even put it in a blog that I wrote of like the from 0 to 800 million users for the internet itself versus ChatGPT, and how it took the internet, I don't know, 15 years or something, and it took ChatGPT 18 months to get to 800 million active users. And so I think with something moving that fast, it's scary to try and lock yourself in to an ecosystem, and that's kind of the different approach that we've got, right? Like GitHub that's integrated into the GitHub ecosystem. It's like a tiered pricing SaaS model. It's closed. model selection. Like even if you look at their different tiers, there's different models available in different tiers. Versus, we're very vendor agnostic, right? We don't have, GitHub is of course owned by Microsoft and has a horse in the AI race, right? With Microsoft's close relationship with foundational models like OpenAI, and we don't, right? We're vendor agnostic. We let you bring your own key if you already have AI inference. We've got over 400 models that you can choose from different providers, and let you kind of specialize, right? And so I've kind of put that into here as these differences in model selection, right? That's what we were talking about. But another key difference is rate limits, right?
Yep.
And so yeah, maybe again, Brian, I'll let you talk about it first. I know I've seen it. It's like, when do rate limits actually inhibit versus help folks in their workflow?
Yeah. So, I mean, of course, with, cost management, rate limits can be important. You want to be able to make sure that, if you have auto approval settings on, that your AI coding agent doesn't get out of control and do an excessive amount of API requests. And like we've said many times in these webinars, it's AI coding is a non-deterministic experience. So the same task might take different amounts of API requests to complete, and you don't want to necessarily allow too many calls to happen for a task where you're trying to limit costs. But I think that rate limits become extremely painful during like things that developers, we all have experience, which are like deadline crunches, production incidents, and being in that flow state. And it's not just the interruption, it's the tactical interruption of coding. It's also the cognitive task of having to ration a tool that's supposed to accelerate you, right? Like developers are using AI coding tools because they want their development to be faster and because they want to offload a lot of that meticulous work to the AI coding agent. So when you're hitting these monthly caps or these invisible rate limits that aren't necessarily overtly disclosed to you before you start the experience, that can be extremely frustrating, both from the actual practical experience of coding and just the mental and psychological experience of really being excited about a tool accelerating your development and having it do just the opposite of that. And yeah, so I wonder, I'm curious if people in the chat have experienced that or have any anecdotes about hitting rate limits that was especially frustrating. And we're happy to chat about your thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, I'm really interested in hearing from folks if they've hit that. I know I hit that even just with the Claude app, like not coding, but just like trying to like iterate on some ideas for a blog. And it's like, I just hit this
Mhm.
limit and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm done working on that right now. Right.
Yeah.
Which is like maybe the worst possible scenario, right? Right. When you're in the middle of flow, to get hit with like you got to wait 5 hours or some unknown period of time for it to reset, it's pretty critical.
Right.
I see a question in the chat that I'm going to relay here. It says, if I have a good GitHub Copilot or a Codex or a Claude subscription already, can I use Kilo? Relying on my subscription costs and limits, like how do I set up different profiles? Brian, do you want to take that, or do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So there's a few ways that you can, use these paid models. One is through the Kilo Gateway, which is essentially a unified gateway for all of these different models where you can add funds to your Kilo account and use any of the available models, and you're just charged at provider cost. But you can also use any of the other API providers. So you can use your own API key from Anthropic or OpenAI or wherever else, and use that API key to have the same experience.
Yep, and exactly, yeah, and they mentioned in the question, the easiest way to do that, I think, is to have separate profiles where you have, a profile that's
Yeah.
connected to your codex or your other API key, and then you can leverage that within Kilo Code. And I think, that leads me to this like question or this next thing that we had here, which is like, why would I want to do that? Like, why would I want to um, try different things? And I think that's because like you hit on it earlier, Brian, right? It's a non-deterministic thing, right? The
Mhm.
LLMs are by their very nature non-deterministic. And so what we prompt the model with, which model we use, all of these things can vary the results a lot. And again, developers are used to being able to tinker with their tools and use them in a way that helps them find the most efficient way to do it. And again, I think that's why it's really critical. And for me, important that Kilo is open source, because it lets you kind of see how we're doing it, and also is, again, open to you trying different ways of using it, right? We're open to the fact that if you already have a subscription to something else, great, use that, use Kilo, right? Our job is not
Yep.
to sell you another subscription to another AI thing that we're going to then limit you on. Our job is to give you the best possible outcome with whatever AI inference you have. And I think that's really important. And yeah, and so I think that then is like, again, this difference in workflows, right? Like how each tool can fit into the workflow is different. When you have an open tool, you can use it in all these different ways, right? We have a CLI that you can use in your pipelines. We have the ability to do automated reviews. We have the ability to, use a little or a lot of AI to do a job. And I think that's really, really valuable. And yeah, I think some of these questions that are coming in chat may help us dig into that more. One was, do you think that the VS Code Kilo Code extension with a GitHub Copilot API key is a better experience than Copilot itself? I've never used it that way. I'd be interested to hear your experience with it. I think, again, the benefit is you can, with Kilo Code, try both and not be locked in one way or another. I think that the way that may play out is with the thing I wanted to talk about next, which is like specialized agents versus one size fits all. And so in Copilot, you kind of have this single chat interface, and I think you have plan and act or some similar, slight difference. But with Kilo Code, you have these different specialized agents. Brian, maybe you can talk about why that's important and like how you use them in your day-to-day, and then that might answer this question of like what could be different if I'm just using my Copilot API inside of Kilo Code.
Totally. Yeah. So to get back to that question, I think the main difference and the main benefit to using Kilo, even if it's with your Copilot API key or however you want to do it, is this true agentic orchestration, right? Like we have these specialized modes, like Brendan said, that start with orchestrator, which can orchestrate subtasks across all of these different modes automatically. The other modes are architect, which I think is architect mode is probably the most equivalent to Copilot's plan, which is just generating project designs and implementation plans. And then Kilo, that'll pass off to code mode for implementation, which is, these are all specialized for these skills and tasks. And then debug if there's any problems. And then there's also ask mode, which allows you to ask questions about your code base without changing anything. And the difference here is, like we said, this true orchestration, agentic orchestration, where you can give orchestrator your task and it will intelligently hand off subtasks to all of these different modes, which is, an experience that I don't think is fully fleshed out in Copilot at the moment. And on top of that, you have all these other features in Kilo that you can then proceed developing with. So like Brendan mentioned, we have code reviews. We also have deploy now. So you can have like the end-to-end all-in-one agentic engineering experience. Even if you're using your Copilot API, going from idea to allowing AI to orchestrate and plan and implement your project, and then eventually having it reviewed and shipped to a live URL. So there's just a wider breadth of developer experience, and it's a lot more dynamic and modular than the Copilot experience.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And then there was a couple questions I wanted to cover. One from our chat in our webinar software, and then one from YouTube. One was regarding the Kilo specialized agents we were just talking about, especially when you have mode switch automatically in the cloud. How can you use different models for different agents? That's a great question. So the profile that you're using with a specific mode will be sticky to that mode, right? So it's like if you wanted to use, Opus for the architect mode, and then, Kimi K2 or the new DevStroll 2 that just came out with code mode, if you just as the human select those to begin with, you'll then see that sticks to that mode. And that'll be true even if you're orchestrating and like then the orchestrator is selecting those different modes. So that's the way to do that. And then once the question from YouTube, which I'm going to do at the risk, which is always a risk of live demoing, I'm going to show real quick, is this is more of a VS Code question, but can I completely remove Copilot from VS Code? So completely remove, no, but let me just show you my VS Code setup because it won't surprise you to learn that I don't have Copilot enabled in my VS Code. And so I'm actually going to share this. These slides are in code. And I'm going to share my VS Code window, hopefully. Very hopefully, evidently. Like I said, the perils of a live demo. Okay, I'm just going to reshare my screen that was working and then bring it over there. So share screen, entire screen here. Okay, great. So this screen is not super optimized for VS Code, but that's okay. You all can use your. It's running my slides right now.
No, it looks good for mine. Yeah.
If you open your settings, which I use Command and the comma key to do that, and you search for Copilot, you can actually enable and disable. You can see these are not the defaults. So by default, these things are enabled. And so I've disabled agent autofix and the agent editor content. So you can disable all those items there. And then if it's still in your list here, I actually also you can right click on it, control which extensions are enabled here. And so that's the way to disable that if you're looking into that. And then I think I can go back to my slide just like that. Oh, look at that. It's like I planned it, but I didn't. Great. And so then I think one other thing to talk about is like, what does it matter for teams, right? Like, what are the trade-offs that teams are making? And yeah, so Brian, maybe you could take this. What have you heard from teams that are trying to integrate AI? Right. Up until now, we've kind of talked about individuals, right? I even like showed my individual VS Code settings, but how does this conversation relate when you're like an engineering manager, or you're trying to get AI into your team?
Yeah, so I think there's a few angles. Some of them do overlap with what the individual needs. Like people want to be able to try new models. They want the flexibility. I know most developers, true developers really love open source, and for a lot of reasons, for the community, for the flexibility, the modularity, and that still applies for teams as well. But I think some of the things that are specific to teams are they want to be able to have advanced usage analytics. I know Copilot has some. We have our team's dashboard where you can filter token usage by cost per token, by project, by teammate. So that's all tracked in one place. And you don't necessarily want to be, I think, in any way locked into models or to an ecosystem at this point in time. Like if we think about a year ago, if you're an engineering manager with the team and thinking about what your workflow was, what your team members' workflow was, and you imagine if you were still locked into that now, it's comical how irrelevant that was. So you want to be able to have that flexibility of, not being necessarily tied to the GitHub ecosystem, being able to work with any Git host, as it says here. And also, if you're using a bunch of different tools, you want to be able to bring your own API keys. So I know, teams are, with all the new tools that are emerging weekly at this point, it's very possible that a lot of teams have different, subscriptions to different coding models or tools. And in Kilo, you have a unified place to use all of them and to not only use all of them, but track the usage across your team and facilitate, a true team coding experience. And then the last thing is, as far as I understand it recently, at least the recent understanding is that Copilot does not allow you to have pooling of credits. Whereas Kilo, you can do that. You can share, you can have a fund of organization credits that can be shared across your entire team. And you can also limit the models that your team is allowed to use. So if you have security, I know a lot of people like Copilot because they feel it has good security. It's a classic enterprise option. But in Kilo, you can also limit the models that your team has access to based on a bunch of different filters tying to security, whether it's multimodal or not, where it's based out of, the cost per token, and all of these different things. So yeah, and I want to also tackle some of these questions while we're asking. Someone said, is there a structure for this event about Kilo versus others, or it's just asking questions? Well, there's a structure, but we also want it to be conversational. Like we want to hear your thoughts live. So we're going to answer as many questions and respond to as many comments as we can. But one person asked, actually a couple people asked, basically, how can I avoid, running out of tokens, and how can I balance this pay as you go costs and not run out? Well, I think that's the beauty of, having this flexible open model selection. So you can use these more expensive high level reasoning models like Opus 4.5, or the latest GPT, or whatever else you prefer, to do the the planning, the architecture, and then use a much cheaper or even a free model for implementation and debugging. And that's true for teams as well. And like Brendan said, you can set a configuration profile so that orchestrator mode knows which model to use for what, and the other modes know which model you prefer to use for those. So there's a lot of like automation and configuration and modularity that you can take advantage of to lower costs. And there's a couple free models in Kilo right now that you can use without even worrying about tokens at all. So yeah, that's my ramble on that.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Yeah, and then like, again, I know we're going back and forth, but you talked about why teams, and I think you covered everything that I had here, right? Well, like, why are folks switching? The rate limits, frustration, vendor independence. But I also wanted to talk about like, why are folks staying? And I think you did a little bit of that, right? Like,
yeah,
the ecosystem, if they have this existing relationship, if the team is happy and productive with AI, right? Sometimes if it's not broken. But what we're hearing from a lot of teams is they're struggling to really get AI adoption to matter to their team. And so I wanted to like talk about those things that I think you should consider if you are a team. And then I know there's a lot of different questions that maybe we could get to, because I don't want to like leave people hanging on the questions as well, like you said.
yeah.
It's like, again, what's the pain point right now? Like, what are you doing for AI adoption? Is that something that is working for you, or is it something that folks say, yeah, it's there, but I never use it, and that's not helping you accelerate, right? The speed at which you're developing. Give it a test on real projects, right? That's the benefit of a tool like Kilo Code being open source, is you can pull it and try it today. Like you said, Brian, there's even free models available. So you could do a very low to zero cost trial. So give it a try, right? I think that's really critical. Consider what teams may be more willing or less willing to change, right? It's easy to do a pilot program with a team that's trying to push the boundaries here.
Mm-hmm.
Understand the true costs you have. And when I say true costs here, right, I'm not just talking about dollars. Again, if you have a team that is trying to use AI and they're hitting the rate limits, that's a really hard thing to calculate maybe, but I think it's worth your time to think through, okay, what is the loss of productivity if we hit rate limits? What is that going to cost us? And plan ahead for what you need to be able to integrate and what it looks like to try and roll this out to your team. And so, yeah. So again, wanted to like talk about some of your other questions. So this was a let's hear your question slide, and maybe we could do that. And I'm just going to kind of go from the bottom up here. So, and I'll let you take the next one, Brian. But this one is near and dear to my heart, having spent 5 years at GitLab, and that's, how does Kilo Code fit into a Git workflow? And so that's a great question. I would say that I use it like with Git very, very tight, right? Like I'm committing things as I'm happy with them. And then I'm letting Kilo maybe take another stab at something, and then looking at those diffs, right? It's really turned me into, in a lot of ways, a code reviewer, because I'm spending my time reviewing code that Kilo's writing and saying, hey, this is great, but it really needs to look like this, and giving it another example to help it. And then the other secret here, so this is a secret I used to share with people when I did work at GitLab, is, nobody knows Git really well, even those of us that worked at a company with Git in its name. And I used to send people to this site, dangitgit.com. I'll put it in the chat, which is like one of my favorite sites to this day, because I still use it when I need it. But I've actually replaced that a little bit with Kilo, because it knows, right? Like, what is AI really good at? It's good at like well-documented things. And what's a well-documented system that we've had for a long time? Git. So I actually have Kilo make a lot of my Git request for me. When I say, I messed up and I want to fix this thing, I want to pull this file out of the commit and put this one in and not have this, and how do I amend it? It's like, it figures it out for me now. So that's one way it fits into the workflow for sure, for me at least.
Yeah, I actually do the same thing. That's funny. There's so many random Git commands, like when I'm trying to navigate through the terminal, that I just have no idea. And I'm always asking Kilo. And I also worked for a company with Git in the name. So that's funny.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. I forgot you worked for the other company with Git in the name. It's okay. We can talk about them.
Yeah, I see another question here that I'll tackle. And 1 second, I'm just gonna find it. Well, I can't find it in the question tab now, but I saw a question that was essentially, I'm a beginner. Like Kilo has a lot of configuration options. It's a little bit intimidating. Is there anything to help me get started? And I'm glad you asked that, because Brendan and I are actually working on a new series, which we've already started quietly rolling out to YouTube. And it's going to be, launched in a little bit more of a formal way soon, which is our Kilo Learn series, where we're going to take you, through not only the basics of Kilo, but how to become a true agentic engineer in this day and age. And we're constantly updating our docs, and I'll be working on more videos that are, really raw technical tutorials of how to get started with Kilo, especially as we ship all of these new features and, really stride towards this all-in-one agentic engineering platform. So I don't know if Brendan, you want to share a little bit more about Learn, but yeah,
I just put a link in the chat to the where we're talking about what it's going to be, and you can sign up to get early access to it. Although the spoiler alert is, if you go on YouTube, you can get even earlier access, because we're posting these videos to YouTube. But we plan to launch it as an entire course that's available to folks, both like a Kilo 101 course that kind of teaches you features, and then also this like agentic engineering course that really it'll demo Kilo but really just to talk about the ideas behind how we engineer Kilo with Kilo, and what we've found is valuable in agentic engineering to really like bring the speed of your team up to like what we're calling Kilo speed. And so, yeah, if you're interested in that, sign up for that for sure. And also make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube. And I want to hit, I think I came in through YouTube of all places, while we were talking about Git. It's like, can I do a code review of a branch before I ever Git push it to the remote? Copilot has this feature found useful. So yes, the answer is yes. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. One, at the end, once Kilo's finished any task, at the very bottom, there'll be a review changes button, and that'll bring up for you the diff for every change that just happened. And so that's one way to do it. And of course, if you're using it inside of an IDE, you can see what the Git diff is before you commit it. But you can actually do that step by step, and then you can roll back either all the changes if you said, oh, this is just not working, or you can specifically click on a file and roll back just that file's changes in that review process. So that's a really, really great question, just to follow up to the one before. And then we've talked a lot about VS Code here. It's what I use, but someone asked, is this compatible with PyCharm? So that's great. There is, yes, is the answer to the question. We have it in the JetBrains plugin store. You can look for Kilo code, and it works with any JetBrains IDE, including PyCharm. And then it says Kilo MCP server plugin available. It's compatible with PyCharm. So again, yes, you can use then the MCP marketplace that we have inside of Kilo. Everything in the Kilo extension itself works within JetBrains, the JetBrains ecosystem. And soon we're looking at what it would be to bring other things outside of that into JetBrains. So things like autocomplete and things like that. But everything in the extension works with JetBrains today. Yeah, great. Do you have another one you want to answer, Brian? Or you want me to take another one?
Yeah, I'm scrolling through the chat right now. We got a lot in both the questions in the chat tab. So let me just find one here. So someone said how to set budgets on a per user or per team level. So in Kilo, we actually take a different approach, which is model limiting. So we You can limit like which models that your team members can use. We don't set limits on user or team level because we have this pooled credit option, which we feel like is a little bit more of an enabling experience for teams, in that you can add funding credits to your overall organization, and once that runs out, your teammates won't be able to use the thing. So that in a way, that's the per team level limit for how many credits you have. um, but that's something that Copilot doesn't have. So you have this shared token usage, and we feel like that's a better experience for teams and enterprise. So that's the answer for that.
Yep. And then, yeah, another one I'm looking at here says, does Kilo have a solution for self-hosted on-prem? And so, yeah, I think that's another big advantage you have with Kilo. We talked about, the model freedom allowing you to, try different models. But the other huge part of that is you can use any model that is like OpenAI compatible, the kind of standard API for a model. So if you have an on-premise AI inference provider, you can use Kilo with that today, completely disconnected from the internet if you are offline. And then if you need the team solutions, the answer is still yes, but you got to get in touch with us because you'll need our enterprise product. But you can today use the open source extension again with any inference provider you want. So you could download the extension and then use it with an on-premise inference provider without any extra setup. So yeah, that's that one.
So I see another one here, that is why Kilo Code versus Klein, as Klein, someone said, feels more reliable with the community, and Kilo is taking the features of Klein. So yeah, Kilo, we present Kilo as the superset of all the best open AI coding tools. So we take the best from Rue and Klein, and we also add our own features. And I think with this new wave of features that we've released over the past few weeks, which I'm also going to be discussing in a webinar on Friday, so everyone should join in on that one as well. We introduced features, like I said, code reviews, Kilo deploy, cloud agents, parallel agents. So we're always taking in the best of what Klein has, and we're also, rapidly shipping our own new features to really make Kilo this agentic engineering platform. And that's a little bit of a different angle than I think the other tools have. And the internal sort of moniker that we have for this shipping rate that we have is Kilo speed. And we're very proud of how fast we ship features, how fast we cover changes in the AI engineering landscape in general, how quickly we get on these new models. And we really want and strive to be, a voice for people that are trying to learn and use agentic engineering to, its most fulfilled level. So that's my answer to that question. Obviously, I'm partial, but I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And yeah, I think this concept of a platform is where we're really going to differentiate ourselves. Like I've been at Kilo for a long time, long enough to remember when we were only a fork of Rue and Klein, but then we quickly, added, the CLI. We were the first ones to add a CLI. We were the first ones to add JetBrains, and still the only one that has open source JetBrains extension. And then on top of that, right, we added autocomplete, right, which is very unique to us. Again, open source, and if Klein wanted to upstream it into theirs, that'd be great. I think the open source community can only benefit developers in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that like enterprises and folks, I think on both ends of the spectrum, folks that are trying to just get started with coding and folks that are on the enterprise and really trying to make it happen for their teams, I think they're going to need this platform, right, that we were talking about. And I was going to send in a link for that, and then probably also, Brian, if you want to find the link to the webinar, because I don't want to like steal all your thunder from Friday.
Yeah.
But if folks want to learn more about how we're thinking about the platform, and that is, everything outside of the IDE, when it comes to shipping code, like this is something I learned in my years at GitLab. It's like writing the code is not even half the battle, probably, right? To
Right.
shipping production code. And so while I love Kilo as an extension for helping me write code, I'm maybe in some ways more excited for all the things that we're doing outside of the editor, in terms of code reviews and cloud agents and the ability to deploy and the ability to, do stuff soon. The thing I'm probably most excited about is it's the coming soon iOS app, and Android. But I'm really excited to be able to like prompt Kilo from my phone when I'm like out and about. And so yeah, I think it's going to be really exciting. All the things that we're adding, kind of outside of the editor are what's going to really enable both teams and people like that just want to get started with kind of vibe coding, move quickly.
Yeah, for sure. And so we'll leave a little time for more questions towards the end, but I think
Mhm.
it's a good time to address some really big news that happened this morning. Not sure if anyone here saw, but today we announced that Kilo has raised $8 million in seed round funding to continue to build the most complete coding agent at Kilo speed, like we said. So that was posted today. It's huge news for us, obviously, and it coincides with the release of all of these new features that we talked about or referenced today. And it doesn't mean we're slowing down. Doesn't mean we're taking a break. It means that we're charging forward. We're gonna continue to ship a bunch of new features and contribute to Kilo becoming, the go-to all-in-one agentic engineering platform. So on Friday, I'm going to be hosting a webinar with our fearless leader, CEO, and co-founder Scott, who's going to join us and give a little talk about what the state of AI and agentic engineering right now. And then I'll be doing a fully fleshed out demo of all these new features and how you can use it to go from idea to production app in a pretty brief amount of time. And just to give you a little sneak peek, I'm going to share my screen and just kind of go over some of the new features that we released or launched in the last week leading up to this announcement and today. And like I said, I'll give the full demo on Friday, but I want to give everyone here a nice little sneak peek. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. Sorry, I got a lot of tabs open here. Okay, so this is the current Kilo Code dashboard. So I'm in my personal workspace here, and you can see it looks a little different than it did a couple weeks ago. So we have all of these new features here. We have the first one I'm going to go over is code reviews, which shipped earlier or at the end of last week, which is AI powered analysis for your personal repositories. So you can enable it here. And a lot of these new features are also enabled by the GitHub integration. So you just go to integration. It's 2 clicks. You click configure. I've already configured it, obviously, but it brings you to GitHub and you just allow the Kilo GitHub app to have access to your org. So I've already done that. And go to code reviews. You can enable code reviews and you can pick the model. So that's something, going back to the purpose of this webinar that Copilot doesn't allow you to do is you can pick from any of our 500 plus models that we support in Kilo Code to do the code reviews. You can change the review style from balanced, strict, and lenient to tell it, how mean it should be on the code that you pushed. You can pick the repositories and you can give it a focus area. So you can have it focus on security, performance, style, whatever you're working on. You can set a timeout so it doesn't, iterate too long and spend too many of your tokens. And you can provide custom instructions. So I said, keep suggestions brief and concise. So that when you have this configured, anytime you push a PR to any of the selected repositories, the Kilo code reviewer will review it with AI and provide inline comments and suggestions to improve the code. So that's pretty awesome. And then we also have cloud agents, which is new. So you can access Kilo from anywhere. You don't need to use your local machine. You can do it from your phone, somebody else's laptop. You just sign in to the Kilo dashboard, describe your task, pick the repository that you want to work in. And then you can also pick from the agentic modes that we discussed earlier. So you can use orchestrator, debug, ask, architect, and code. You can pick the model, configure environment variables and setup commands, and start sessions here, which, I've already started. And another really cool thing that shipped today is Kilo sessions. So you actually now have sessions that are unified across all the different places that you can access Kilo. So the sessions that you use in the IDE, in the CLI, in the cloud, you can access, fork, resume them from anywhere, any of the other options. So that's, super useful for individuals, but also for teams, because you can also share the session. So you can share a link to the session that you're working on, and then one of your teammates can fork it and resume on their own Kilo, org or wherever they're working. So that's awesome. We also have deploy. So you can, once you're done with whatever you're building, if it's a Next.js app, you can deploy it to a shareable public URL. So if anyone's been to some of the past webinars I've hosted, you'll know that my favorite demo game is this game, Kilo Man, which is basically this like Super Mario game here. And I'm not sure if that shared my my new window, but I'll share the link to Kilo Man later so you can check it out. But basically, it allows you to create these public URLs that you can share. I know in Kilo, the way we use it is if we're making changes to our website or whatever, and we want someone else to look at how the changes look in a browser, you can deploy just the branch you're working on. So it's not just the whole repo. You can also specify the branch, and then your teammates can look at the changes without actually having to ship them to the live website. So that's awesome. We also have managed indexing, which is now turned on for everybody. So you can have these shared. I haven't done it in my personal workspace yet, but you have these shared indexes that enable semantic search of your code base. So you can share it across your org, and it also just makes the whole coding experience much faster. And then we also have App Builder, which I'm going to hold off on demoing until the webinar on Friday. So anyone who's interested in what that might be, come join the webinar on Friday. But to summarize, we're super excited by this fundraising announcement. It means that we can, charge ahead and continue shipping these new features. And, I'm super excited to be showing them off on Friday and showing how Kilo really is that all-in-one agentic engineering experience.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Brian. I mean, we're shipping these things so fast that I think I might need to join that just to make sure I understand all the great things that we can do. And I'm really excited to have this fundraise and to enable us to kind of bring these features to our community, right? And like that was a really critical part of this past week of like trying to get this all out the door. Is like we wanted to make sure that all of this was enabled both for teams and for individual users, right? Because we really believe that giving folks the freedom of choice is going to allow them to make the right decision for themselves. And teams will need teams features that we've talked about, and they'll come and they'll be able to help us build also a successful business. Something that I've got experience having done at GitLab, and I think that it's something that takes a lot of concerted effort, and that's why I'm so glad that Sid is on board as one of our co-founders, who also co-founded GitLab, and is guiding us down that same path of being able to build a sustainable open source business. So again, thanks so much everyone for joining us today. That's the time that we had. Switching gears back to our original topic of Kilo versus Copilot, there's a feature comparison page on our website you can check out. If you want to try Kilo, check out the documentation. Give it a try yourself, right? Like we've got free models available in Kilo. You can use those. I posted one of the questions someone was asking about that. A link to our docs where we try to keep up to date, like what free models are available. You also could bring your own key if you already have a key. And then, join our Discord community, kilo.love/Discord, if you want to learn more or get direct support. I know there's a couple questions that didn't get answered that I asked folks to join Discord so we could, kind of troubleshoot that more live with them. And thanks so much for coming. And I would say Godspeed, but it's more like Kilo speed today. So Godspeed, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And also make sure to sign up for the webinar on Friday. It's going to be at 12 p.m. Eastern. We're going to have our CEO, Scott, join me for really interesting talk. And then I'm going to do like a full scale demo of the end-to-end building experience with Kilo. So I think it'll be super useful to see all those new features. So I'm excited for everyone to join that.
I think it's Scott's first live webinar too. So you should all join and ask him really hard questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. Take care and have a good rest of your day or rest of your evening, depending on where you're calling in from.
Thanks everyone.